especially if we got upside down lighting.
Yeah.
Go back on
Everybody's
my
enjoyed
drive.
lunch. We're going to go ahead and get on with the program. So again, I'd like to welcome you to our annual State of the City address, and thank you for coming. I'm Mark Warsh. I'm the chair this year. I'm with Hometown National Bank in Joliet, and just again would like to welcome everyone for attending today. I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker. Bob Odenkirk is a graduate of the University of Illinois and the John Marshall Law School. Prior to being an attorney, he worked as a Joliet police officer for 10 years. Bob was a highly decorated police officer who was awarded the Martin Murin Labor Award in 1995. After graduating law school, Bob left the police department to become an assistant corporation counsel for the city of Chicago. Then in 2005, he was recruited to work with the United States Department of State in Iraq. After spending 20 months in Iraq, Bob returned to the United States to practice law and eventually became a partner in Odenkirk, Allred & Associates, located here in downtown Joliet. In April 2011, Bob was elected to the Joliet City Council, and in 2015, he was elected mayor and re-elected again in 2019. Bob is married to Rebecca, and they live on the near west side of Joliet with their blended family of 3. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Bob Odenkirk.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is a big room. Can you hear me in the back? Everyone can hear well? Good. I'll keep my voice up. Hopefully the Herald News doesn't say that I was screaming at the audience. I want to thank 176 for having everyone out today. This is a great event, great hall here in Joliet. Thank you for their lunch. There's a number of dignitaries here who I'd like to recognize, or groups I'd like to recognize. If I miss anyone, I apologize. Shorewood Mayor Cece DeBold is here. Chief Judge Dan Kennedy from Will County. The Will County State's Attorney Jim Glasgow and his office are here. There's representatives from the Village of Shanahan, representatives from the Will County Clerk's Office, representatives from the Will County Governmental League, representatives from Will County Recorder of Deeds. Joliet Township High School Board is here, Dan Coffey, Garrett Bean, and Lorraine Guerrero-Newmeyer. There are representatives from the Will County Executive Office and members of the Joliet Housing Authority Board that are here. There's also members of the Joliet City Council that are here. Councilman Pat Mudrin, Councilwoman Sherry Reardon, Councilman Joe Clement, Senior Councilperson Jan Quillman, and Councilman Larry Huck. As well as our City Manager Jim Caparelli, members of city staff, our Police Chief Bill Evans, and our Fire Chief Jeff Carey. And then finally, my family is here. My mother-in-law Ruth Evans is here, my mom Mary Odenkirk is here, and my beautiful wife Rebecca is here. So thank you all for coming out. I've done this speech. This is the 8th year I've done it now. I kind of have a format, and I'm going to stick to that a little bit. Usually when I give the numbers at the beginning, I compare them to last year or the trend for the last couple of years. I thought it was important this year to put context on what's going on in Joliet the last 8 years. So I'm going to compare the numbers that we have currently to where the city was in 2014. Then we give some explanations of how I think Joliet got to the point where we're doing as well as we are. So I'll start with the gaming revenue because that's the one negative number. There was a time when Joliet got $36 million a year in gaming revenue. That's gone down significantly over the years. In 2014, the city collected $19 million. Last year, we collected $13.8 million. There's new licenses in Illinois, and of course, there's gambling machines all over. That's definitely eroded what we make from the riverboats. But I want to point that out first because even with that loss of revenue, you're going to see how well the city's done in other areas to make up for it. This would have been critical 10 or 15 years ago to see that kind of loss, but we've been able to overcome it. If you look at the hotel motel tax, in 2014, the city collected $2.3 million. Last year, the city collected $4.5 million. We doubled the tax revenue in hotel motel tax. Real estate transfer tax, in 2014, the city collected $1.6 million. Last year, the city collected $3.4 million. Again, in 8 years, we doubled what we're making in those taxes. Building permits, in 2014, the city made $1,076,000 in building permits that were issued by the city. 2022, the city made $7.4 million, 7 times more in 8 years from building permits being issued. Sales tax, in 2014, the city collected $44.8 million. Last year, the city collected $62.5 million. Our general fund revenue shows the same pattern. 2014, the city collected $167 million. Last year, the city collected $241 million. So significant increases across the board. It led to an increase in our reserve fund, which is basically the savings account for the city. In 2014, we had a healthy $52.8 million in reserves. Coming out of this year, the city has over $80 million in our reserve fund. And then finally, the estimated assessed value of housing or real estate in Joliet, it's gone up every single year that I've been mayor. Last year, the EAV went up another 10%. On average, since I've taken over as mayor, property in Joliet is up 54.21% on average value. So those are great numbers. Can't dispute. They are what they are. The city is doing tremendously well. The question is, how did we achieve this? And I put a lot of thought into it. Obviously, with a lot of hard work from our staff, we're incredible, with the city council members, with the different city managers over the last 8 years. But I think a little bit more fundamental. I think there was a real change in attitude and a seismic change at City Hall. And it really narrowed down to two different things. When I ran for mayor against Mayor Girani, I talked about being ultra aggressive and pursuing business, pursuing development. We've done that at City Hall. We have taken a different approach in Joliet. I think that, and I think the Economic Development Committee and the Economic Development Officer have played huge roles in what we're doing. I'm going to get to that in a second. But as far as the ultra aggressive approach, as mayor, I've been to Springfield numerous times, meeting with elected officials, or sometimes pounding on elected officials for relief or help here in Joliet. I made numerous trips to Chicago, trips to Schaumburg to meet with IDOT representatives, multiple trips to Washington, D.C. I've been to Denver, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, all pursuing business or investment in Joliet. I know Councilman Larry Hug, who's the chairman of the Economic Development Committee. For the first time, Councilman Hug and our staff went to the ICSC convention in Las Vegas. This is an international convention for retailers. The city never was represented there. We are now. I know the city manager, Jim Caparelli, has been to Washington, D.C. He's been to Springfield. He's been to Pittsburgh. He's been to Kansas. Again, there was an ultra-aggressive approach by the city, not just to sit back and wait for things to come to Joliet, but to go out and bring things to Joliet. The second factor is the Economic Development Committee. I got to give a little background. I was elected in 2011 with Councilman Hug and Councilman Morris. We were new council people. At the time, the city of Joliet was facing a $27 million annual deficit. And I remember Councilman Hug suggesting at a city council meeting that we should hire an economic development director. It's crazy, but a city our size never had that position. And he suggested also an economic development committee. At the time, Mayor Girani shot the idea down and replied that he had his CARB committee. I wonder how many people remember what the CARB committee was. It was a committee to attract and retain businesses. That was its name. What it was in reality, it was a group of local businessmen, many of them Joliet guys, who met in private with the mayor. There was no city council oversight. The council didn't approve these appointments. There were no city council members that were members of the CARB committee. The meetings were not open to the public. The media was not allowed to hear what was being discussed. The agenda was not published. When I became mayor in 2015, I did away with all that. There are no secret committees. There are no backroom deals. We established the Economic Development Committee, and I think the results speak for themselves. So I'm going to go into the results a little bit, and there's too much to talk about in one speech for what's going on in the last 8 years. So I tried to narrow it down, and I came up with 9 significant developments or accomplishments which I think reflect what I just said about the ultra-aggressive approach and about the payoff from the Economic Development Committee that we now have in place. Number 1, the new courthouse downtown. I see Reagan Freitag is here. Prior to becoming mayor, I was receiving complaints from Will County. The city of Joliet was not even participating in the talks about a new courthouse. The Republicans controlled the county board, and they were intent on moving the courthouse out of downtown and building fresh near Silver Cross Hospital at I-355. One of the first things I did as mayor was convene Reagan and other Republican county board members, along with Larry Walsh and Democrat county board members. We actually met in my law office, and within 2 or 3 meetings, we had a deal cut for the new courthouse. Again, it's an example of the ultra-aggressive approach, but getting after it, getting on the county board, and bringing them to the table. The second item I identified is the Hobo Road Bridge. And it's a very similar story. Literally one of the first things I did, may have been the day after the election, in 2015, I met with Larry Walsh and Nick Palmer in Larry's office. And I talked about the development to the south, the warehousing, the logistics, and I agreed that this is great. There's lots of revenue, thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs. But I said, Larry, we have to address the traffic. It's becoming a problem. The trucks are becoming a problem. I suggested the whole Road Bridge idea. It was not my idea. It had been floated before. I told them, I'm going to get behind this. I'm going to get this done. I want your help in doing it. And Larry and Nick Palmer were with us all the way. We went to IDOT. We went to private investors. But the bridge is being built. It should be open in just a couple of months. And it's significant because it's a concerted effort to get the trucks off of Chicago Street, off of Brick Street, off of local roads, west on I-80, directly in and out of Centerpoint. I'll talk a little bit about that more later, but again, if you recall at the time, you could probably look back at news articles, there was a lot of, not just skepticism, there was outright cynicism. I remember a news reporter laughing at me, well, what makes you think you can get this done? Well, we did. The bridge is going to be open in a couple of months. And again, there's a pattern here. I think you're going to see this throughout the speech of things that no one thought could be done in Joliet that have been done. Number 3 is the Cullinan property at I-80 and I-55. I know there's representatives from Cullinan here. This was a property that sat vacant for many years, and that was at the intersection of 2 major federal highways. There have been starts and stops over the years, including Ross Perot's company from Texas proposed to build trucking terminals and warehousing on that site, and many of the current members of the City Council and myself voted that down. We thought that was a better use for that property. And we have one. Cullinan is what the city was waiting for. I'm going to talk a little bit more of that later, but certainly if you go to the site, you can see the infrastructure being built, the new interchange directly from I-55 onto the site. And again, that was a project that has been met for years now with skepticism. It's never really going to be built. It's never going to go forward. It is being built. You guys are here today. You can see what's happening at the site. I'm excited about what's going to happen at Cullinan. I'll talk a little bit about that more later. Number 4, the prison redevelopment. I think everyone knows the story about the prison. It's sat vacant since 2002, I believe. Not only was it an eyesore or a dilapidated property in Joliet, it became dangerous. People were breaking in. People locked themselves in the cells. Our fire department had to rescue them. There were arsons and fires being set. Our firefighters were out there in the middle of the night putting out fires in the prison. The last fire, I don't remember the date, but it happened about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I left the fire scene. I came to City Hall. I sat down with Marty Shanahan, who was the city manager at the time. I said, enough is enough. Get a call into the governor. We're going down to Springfield. We went down to Springfield within a couple of weeks, and we worked out a deal for the city to lease the prison at no cost and to take over and take control of what was happening on that site. And the story's been tremendous. Again, I think everyone's familiar with it. But that's a great story because of the volunteerism. There's been very little public dollars spent from either the city or the state. There's been some grants that have been given, but 90% of the work and the improvements that happened at the prison were all from volunteers of our community and other communities that saw the value in saving that building and that site. This has been a great story, but again, another example of the city of Joliet taking the horse by the reins and dictating what's going to happen, not simply waiting back and waiting for things to come our way. The 5th area of discussion would be the development in the south, the southern region of Joliet. I've really narrowed it down to 3 specific projects because there's been dozens, but the first I want to mention is Amazon. Not only is it 3,500 new jobs, obviously a great addition to Joliet, but Amazon is relevant, I believe, because when I ran for mayor 8 years ago, the conversation about what was happening in the southern region was not about trucks or traffic. It really was about the jobs and the quality of jobs, and that people were being paid minimum wage, which was far below the $15 an hour that Amazon pays or paid. That employees were getting cut off before they were eligible for benefits. There was temp labor, that these were not good jobs, and there was a lot of complaints coming in about that level of jobs. Amazon was a game changer. When they came in, again, 7 years ago, $15 an hour, significantly higher than what the other warehouses were paying. Amazon offered insurance to their employees, they offered matching 401k contributions, and they offered college contribution for expenses for college. And what Amazon did was really raise the bar in that region. Any other warehouse that was looking for employees or logistics center or trucking center had to come up to meet Amazon. Otherwise, they weren't going to find employees. So I think Amazon was a significant development in that area and what's been happening in the southern region of Joliet. The second I want to mention is North Point. I think everyone in this room is familiar with North Point. It probably has an opinion one way or the other. I mention it for two reasons. Number one, North Point is a $1 billion investment, billion with a B, $1 billion investment that came into Joliet. It represents 20 years of union construction jobs and tens of thousands of new jobs on the inside. I think more importantly, from my perspective, North Point, with the closed loop that the Joliet City Council demanded that they build, represents the first effort to get control over what's happening in the southern region. We know there's 2 train yards inside Center Point, one in Elwood, one in Joliet. We know millions of trucks are coming and going from that train yard every year. The North Point development is going to be required to tie in directly with Center Point. Any truck that's going to enter or leave North Point, it has to come through Center Point and not on local roads. So I think that's significant, and I think the council also believes that that's the way forward. There is more development coming. It's not going to stop, but it has to be controlled. It just simply can't be plopping warehouses down randomly at every farmer who wants to sell their property. The third development to the south that I want to talk about is Lion Electric. If you're not familiar, Lion Electric was a Canadian company. They manufacture electric buses. They wanted to open a plant in the United States, the first electric bus manufacturing plant. There was a nationwide search, and it came down between Joliet and Texas. With the help of Governor Pritzker, we were able to land Lion Electric here in Joliet. Again, thousands of new jobs, high-paying manufacturing jobs. They're here mostly because of the proximity to the intermodal. It was a great addition for Joliet, and also a great way to show that we're diversifying what's coming in. They aren't simply warehouses being built in that region. There's logistics, there's trucking, there's manufacturing. So I thought Lion was noteworthy to mention. The sixth event that I wanted to talk about was the $1.4 billion committed to I-80 improvements and restoration. I think everyone in this room would agree that with all the development that the infrastructure has lagged woefully behind. I wasn't a council member. I don't understand when the I-80 improvements were made years ago and it was expanded to 3 lanes, why that ended at the new Lennox border or the Joliet border, but it did. There's been virtually no improvements on Chicago Street, Route 52, Route 53, or I-80, or any of the interchanges, while these intermodals are pumping out, again, millions of trucks a year. So for Governor Pritzker to commit $1.4 billion is significant, and I really want to thank him for that. There's going to be additional lanes added to I-80. There's going to be complete new construction of the on-ramps and off-ramps at the interchange at Hobolt Road, at Center Street, at Richard Street, at Chicago Street. And there's going to be a whole new bridge built over the river. The Plains River Bridge is going to be completely rebuilt. So again, I think we all agree that this is probably a long time coming, but it's a significant achievement for our city to finally get that type of investment in our infrastructure. Number 7, I want to talk about the evolution of the Joliet Mall. I know the representatives are here today. About 5 or 6 years ago, there was a feeling, certainly within City Hall, that the mall was probably on its way up. We saw what was happening throughout the country. Other malls were struggling or failing. A couple of the major retailers had left the mall, and we anticipated losing a major source of revenue. We were wrong. Joliet Mall is still operating strong. They've never wavered, even throughout the pandemic. They're over 90% full. There just was an announcement about Ultimo Motors coming to take over the Sears property and renovate the Sears property. And I think noteworthy is not just what's happening inside the mall itself, but the whole area around the mall not only continues to thrive, but actually is expanding and growing. Binny's has come in the town. Chick-fil-A, Raising Cane's, Costco, a little bit up the road. A couple restaurants. There's a restaurant I'm going to talk about in a little bit, the Olive Garden. But also another major announcement is coming soon about a new restaurant. So just the whole area and how they've thrived, again, through the pandemic and through times where other malls are really struggling, we haven't seen that here at the Joliet Mall. Number 8. In the last 8 years, there have been 4 corporate headquarters that have located in Joliet. Every time I say that in a speech, I think people are surprised. They're not aware of that. We hear about, again, about warehousing and truck terminals. You don't necessarily hear about the corporate jobs that are coming to Joliet. Cadence Logistics relocated. They moved their corporate headquarters from Alsip, Illinois to Joliet. M2M in Motion moved their corporate headquarters from Schaumburg to Joliet. Illinois Marine Towing moved their corporate headquarters from Lamont to Joliet. And this last year, GP Transco opened a corporate headquarters in Joliet. That's been something that I know our Economic Development Committee and the Council have talked about for years, pursuing corporate jobs and higher level jobs and diversifying the jobs. We've done it the last 8 years, and it's something that should be noted. And then the ninth issue I want to talk about briefly is the water project. And again, I don't really have to reiterate too much. I think everyone knows that we're going to acquire Lake Michigan water. But again, I think it fits into the narrative that I'm trying to say today. I was a councilman for 4 years. I don't remember one discussion about the fact Joliet's sitting on a well that's going to run dry in 15 years. My first year as mayor, I don't remember any discussion at either my level or at the council level about the crisis, the water crisis that we're facing. I got a call from Mayor Weisner from Aurora, the late Mayor Weisner, who told me, you have a problem in Joliet. He was hosting a water symposium in Aurora. He invited me to come up and meet with him and see the symposium. And what I saw was eye-opening. It's projected by the year 2030, we will not have enough water to meet our current demand here in Joliet. So I came back and immediately reformed the Environmental Commission, which had not been active. Those commission members, all volunteers, put in tens or probably hundreds of hours to study and decide on making recommendations on a new water source. They made 2 recommendations to the council. The council voted on the Lake Michigan allocation. And we didn't stop there, and I think this is important to the story. Joliet's big enough. We could have done this on our own, had our own project, but myself and the council thought differently. We know we're the 3rd biggest city in the state. We are by far the biggest city in the region, and we decided to take a regional approach. And not just bring in water for Joliet, but water for anyone in the region who wanted to join us. And the logic was simple. This is going to cost money. The more people on board, the more people paid into the system, the cheaper it's going to be for everybody involved, including the Joliet residents. So I want to thank the other communities that got involved in the Water Commission. We formed the Grand Prairie Water Commission, Romeoville, Crest Hill, Manuka, Shorewood, and Channahon. Rockdale is going to buy water from the city of Joliet. Lamont is talking about buying water from the Grand Prairie Commission. There's also a private water company that's talking about getting involved in this. So again, it's another example of the forward thinking and the aggressive approach, going out and solving a problem and really turning up something. I think it's a legacy project for the council. I see Allison Swisher here. I do want to thank Allison for all her work on this. And just so we understand, it's not just a matter of building a pipeline to Chicago and pumping the water to Joliet and throughout the region. This is a complete overhaul of our water system. We're going to keep the current system intact in case there's a problem or an emergency, but we have to redo the entire system, and that includes rebuilding, replacing every water main built inside Joliet prior to 1970, and replacing all lead pipes in the Joliet water system. So again, it's a great story. It's a great credit to the council people who have been involved in this, and I think, again, it's just the ninth example of things that have happened here in the last 8 years, moving our city forward. So briefly, I'll talk about some of the major announcements for 2022. They're all good. Number 1, Hollywood Casino is going to the Cullinan property. They made that announcement. We knew inside City Hall that this was coming for some time now, but we couldn't talk about it for various reasons. But we also knew back when the licenses became transferable that Hollywood Casino was going to leave the site that they were on off of Route 6. And there was a serious attempt to get Hollywood to leave Joliet and relocate to other communities. And I want to thank Hollywood for their commitment to Joliet, and certainly for what they're going to do for the Cullinan project. There's a lot of infrastructure. It's expensive. What Cullinan needs to be successful, Hollywood ensures that that's going to happen. And not that we doubted you guys, but Hollywood definitely made sense and secured that project. So it's a great step moving forward. Number 2, Tony's Final Foods at Jefferson and Larkin. You know, as we know, that's a major intersection in Joliet, maybe the most traveled intersection, and there was urban blight and a dilapidated corner sitting there for years. Tony, with Planet Fitness and the other outlet stores that are coming, is a great addition to our community. I want to thank Tony for their investment. Number 3 was the Northridge Plaza at Theodore and Larkin. There's been a complete renaissance. Again, if you look back 5 or 6 years at the plaza, some of the vacant buildings that were there, you look at what's there now with Vaza Fitness, with Portillo's, there's a new building under construction right now. It's been a great addition. There were great announcements made in 2022 at that plaza. Number 4, I referenced earlier the Olive Garden. I guess you couldn't have a speech without mentioning Olive Garden, but I'll say this, if the turnout for Olive Garden is anything like the demand, they're going to be printing money, because that has been a restaurant that has been highly pursued by our city for a long time, and it was great to see them make the announcement. And actually, we meeted with Olive Garden officials after the speech today, so their opening is coming soon. And then the last thing of note from last year, something actually just happened a couple weeks ago, but we received word from MoneyGeek.com that the city of Joliet, and this is new for me, this has not happened in my lifetime, the city of Joliet, as far as American cities go with 100,000 people or more, was ranked the 8th safest city in the country. It's a real credit to our police department, to our Chief Evans. So it is a great step forward. And I think, without delving too far into it, I think what we're seeing, crime has gone up significantly all over the country. Certainly in the city of Chicago, you read about it every day. That hasn't happened in Joliet. Chief Evans presented the crime numbers to the city council about a month ago. Our crime numbers have not spiked like you see all over the place. So again, it's a big credit to the men and women of the Joliet Police Department, and that's something our city should be proud of. We certainly aren't viewed that way in the region compared to other cities, but for a city of our size, that is a significant achievement. So congratulations, Chief. So finally, I'm going to end it. Hopefully I'm not running too long, but every year I like making a big announcement. I have one I want to make this year. Since the 1980s, the U.S. Steel site has been closed and vacated and again dilapidated on the east side of Joliet. And I know over the years, I know prior to me becoming mayor, there were potential buyers at the table, the deals fell through. The same thing happened several times that I know of deals that potential buyers, and they could not close the deal at U.S. Steel. So I'm happy to announce today that we have been working with a group along with Governor Pritzker's office and Argonne National Labs. They intend to buy U.S. Steel. They intend to convert the site into a Joliet Echo campus. They're currently working through the environmental issues on the site. They're working with U.S. Steel. The idea is to implement advanced technology for plastics and metals. They want to recycle electric car batteries or vehicle batteries, and they want to reprocess automotive plastics on the site. So the U.S. Steel site is a 57-acre site. It's been abandoned. Some of the buildings on the site they plan on tearing down. Others will remain standing and be refitted. They plan on repairing the rail access to the site and the Collins Street entrances. They're also looking at other possibilities, which include exploring solar and data center opportunities at the site. So about 2 months ago, myself and City Manager Jim Caparelli took a day trip to Pittsburgh, and we met with executives at U.S. Steel and emphasized how important this was to the redevelopment of Joliet, to the east side of Joliet, and to the region. Quite frankly, I think we got through. I think U.S. Steel is committed to seeing this through. This is a great project for Joliet. There'll be thousands or hundreds of thousands of new jobs, high-paying jobs, green jobs. This is going to ease the burden on the local landfills. And again, we're talking about green recyclable energy and green recyclable jobs. So we have the support of Governor Pritzker in Springfield. So it's a big announcement, something the city has pursued for many, many years. I'm happy to talk about that moving forward, as well as the other good things that have happened in our city. So I want to thank everyone for coming out. I always open up if anyone has a question or something, a topic they want me to talk about, I'd be happy to do that. But just in closing, looking back, right, preparing this speech and preparing to say and looking at all the things that have happened in the last 8 years, where the city was to where it is now. It's been a tremendous experience being the mayor. I feel blessed every day to lead this great city, even through the difficult times of the pandemic and the social unrest. And I am excited. I'm thrilled to see or think about where Joliet's going to be 8 years moving forward. So again, thank you for coming out. If there are any questions or any topics someone wants me to speak about, I'd be happy to do so. It's a pretty easy cross. Probably not going to be this easy on Saturday at the debate, but no, thank you again for coming out. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, Weed, what's the matter with you?
right, thank you, Mayor, for all those interesting points, and great to hear all the great stuff going on in Joliet. Just a couple updates on upcoming events. Next Tuesday is the annual dinner and celebration of success for the Chamber. RSVPs for that are due tomorrow, and it's close to selling out, so if you've been dragging your feet, please get those tickets as soon as you can. On Thursday, February 23rd, our next business after hours will occur at Will County Habitat for Humanity Restore. That's from 4:30 to 6:30. Our next business before hours is at United Cerebral Palsy Center for Disability Services on Tuesday, February 28th. That's from 8 to 9:30 a.m. And then the Council for Working Women March Luncheon will be a Women's History Month panel. That's at the Holiday Inn and Suites, Thursday, March 2nd from 11:45 to 1. So that's it. Thank you so much for attending and have a great afternoon.